Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast, and I get to do this every single time with really cool people that are making a difference in the world. I'm Dr. Jim Hoven, your host, and today is no different. And I am super stoked for the person I have here today, Mr. Brian Joyce, because I love TV. Brian, I know you're a TV guy because you're freaking general manager of a station, man.
It's a fun job.
Yeah,
it's a fun job.
I mean, you're at the highest level, as the executive level of a TV station that's big here in Denver, Channel 7.
Yep.
And some of the things that you've already shared with me in our brief time pre-camera, just they really scintillate me, and we're going to have a great conversation. So if you're seeing this, you're going to want to, when you're done, you're going to want to share it, you're going to want to pass it around, because you're going to learn some stuff, not so much about TV, which, again, I'm a big TV fan, but about leadership. See, because Brian's job as leader of that station, there's a lot to learn that all of us can take, whether it's me in my role here as COO or whether it's you in your role as a coach or a team or a parent. There's going to be lots of cool stuff to discuss today. So let's jump in. Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate you having me on.
Pleasure.
I'm humbled that you even ask a TV guy to come on and do this. And, you know, when you and I first connected on this and some of your staff, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? You know what? I love to talk about leadership. Yes. I really do, because whether you like it or not, we're all leaders in some way in our lives, whether that be through our churches or through our families or through our work or whatever it is. In some way, we're all leaders. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about that. I've been in the television business my entire career.
Yeah.
I've done it for, 30 plus years. And it's a great industry. It's a fun job because we're so attached to the community and what we do.
How did you get into TV in the beginning?
It's a funny story, all right? And I haven't told this to many people, right? Because a lot of this is in the vault, locked and sealed. But I went to school in Oklahoma, and I was at Oklahoma State University, and I had a minor in theater, believe it or not. Okay. I had a broadcasting major, and I was minoring in theater. And at the time, my theater teacher said, hey, there's a traveling company traveling through the United States right now, and they're starting this new network called the Warner Brothers Network. I don't know if you remember the WB.
Oh, for sure. It had the little frog
as the frog, right?
Guy.
And she said they're coming through Oklahoma City, and they're doing some auditions for something. You ought to go try out. And I didn't know anything about television. I was like, okay, I'll do it. What the heck, right? What do I have to lose? So I drove down to Oklahoma City and tried out for these execs at Warner Brothers. Go back to school. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call, and they say, hey, we really liked your audition when we came through Oklahoma City. Would you like to come out in L.A. and talk to us about a few things? I said, sure.
And what year in college are you at this point?
I am a sophomore.
Okay, so you're not even close to graduating yet. Okay.
So I go and I talk to them, and I go back to school, and 2 weeks later I get a phone call, and they say, hey, we really liked your audition. We want to know if you'd like to be our National Kids Club host for a 30-minute kids show on the WB.
Wow.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And I said, first of all, I have to graduate, because if I don't graduate, my parents they're going to be a little upset, right? They're putting me through school. I'm very grateful and thankful for that. So I said, I have to graduate. And they said, no problem. We're going to work with your schedule, and we're going to fly you back and forth to LA when we need to, and then go to Oklahoma City to shoot some of the segments at the local WB affiliate there.
Come on.
And so for 2 years, I did a 30-minute kid show.
What did you learn from that?
Oh, man, I learned a lot. I learned how to present myself in front of a camera, because I was on the air for the first 10 years of my career after I did that. But I think it really taught me that, that first instinct about community. I never really realized how much you can touch people by simply being on TV and putting out great content in front of, in my case at the time, a bunch of kids on Saturday morning watching a 30-minute commercial, and how much of an impact you can make with good content and, an ability to touch people in that way.
Isn't that impressive?
Yeah, it was crazy.
I'm telling you, I think that's so cool. I want to rewind just a little bit before that. So you were studying kind of theater and the communication side and broadcasting. Yeah. When going into it, was your intention, did you plan on maybe going into TV at the end of it?
I wanted to do sports. Because I was always a sports fan.
Yep.
Or news or something around that. But I had a passion for sports. So I thought, sports journalism was what I wanted to do. And so the television side of the kids thing was just a kind of a serendipity, right?
Yes.
I got to go down there and do this show for 2 years. It got me comfortable in front of a camera. It got me comfortable using a teleprompter if we had to, thinking on the fly, really honing my communication skills.
I love that.
And I got lucky. I mean, it's all luck.
Isn't that true?
And,
timing.
oh my gosh. It's
Timing's
all about
everything.
timing. And so for 2 years I did that. After I graduated, I thought to myself, well, do I want to go to the entertainment route? Because I was kind of immersed in that a little bit. Or do I want to go the broadcasting route and stick to that? And I did go to the broadcasting route. And so for the 10 years of my career when I started out in sports.
And so you did the sports. See, that was one of my things growing up. I thought I might want to. So when I was a kid, I thought, should I be a sportscaster? Because I loved sports and I loved watching Ron Zapolo and some of these guys from way back, right, doing their thing here locally. Or did I want to be a veterinarian or an oceanographer? And I ended up being a chiropractor.
There you go.
But it was, TV's always been a big part of my life. And maybe it's in part because both my parents worked and I was an only child. And so it was kind of the babysitter for me, right? So I got connected. But to your point about really driving home the connection you can make with the community, even to this day, I find that I'm one of those people that is not like what the newer TV watchers are in that the appointment time TV or whatever you call it. If I have my show, I really like my show, I plan my time like, ooh, man, around this. Now it's gotten a lot easier for some of the stuff I like to watch because now I can stream it and all the rest of it. But I get connected to the characters where I feel like I know them. And that's on, like, I love, for example, Homestead Rescue. It's a really cool show about a family that goes and takes people's homesteads that are breaking down and then they help them to be self-sufficient. I feel like I know those people, you know?
Well,
it's really cool.
I think that's the power of television, right? That's why I love it so much too, is because it's the connection piece to the community, especially for us, right? As a news organization, and what we do every single day at Denver7 is try to connect to the community in somehow. You know, through our newscast or through the content or through sports or whatever it might be. We're connectors of the community somehow. And I think that's why I love this business so much, is because of that connecting piece. You know, and obviously in the space that I'm in now, you know, I lead a group of people of 155, 60 people at the station. And I've learned so much over the years about leadership and how grateful you need to continue to be in your life. Because to your point, you know, things come along and you don't realize it. You know, and what that can do to not only propel maybe your career, but the people around you too. And what that does for the people around you that you prop up and help them along with their careers.
I was, sorry to interrupt. I was just listening to something. So we're going to transition to the leadership side of things now, because just like people need good leaders, communities need good leaders, and TV can act depending on what you choose to put in, like on your phone or anything, whatever you choose to watch. If you let that lead, you can go down good or bad roads. But I was listening to a John Maxwell podcast today on leadership, and he's one of my staples for leadership. Read lots of his books, and I'm really into just kind of the way that he goes about things. And they were talking about helping people win, helping them win. I found that to be it's kind of an interesting thing, because on one side you want to help people win. On the other side, one of my teammates who's really into leadership here, he's one of our young leaders, right? So he's one of the guys that I get to work with every day as we develop together. And he sent me something this morning on leadership from another guy named Jocko Willing. They couldn't be more different. Right? I mean, John Maxwell, former pastor, leading huge churches, now leading people all over the world, 56,000 coaches in all these countries. And then Jocko Willink leading men in war that are
totally different.
And totally different ways to get the same thing done. And he was talking about ownership. So on one side, helping people win to kind of prop them up. Like, do you help let your kid? Do you let your kid win in basketball sometimes to give them confidence? Versus the discipline of, hey, man, you better take ownership of this and you're going to lose till you do, right? Like, it's really fascinating how I think there's multiple leadership styles based on personality and characteristics and in environments. Tell me what you really like about leadership in the environment of television and what you do.
Yeah, for me, leadership starts with one word, and that's gratefulness.
Okay.
And if you're a grateful leader, I think that propels you to things beyond what you expect. And I really think if you take that approach with people of first sitting down and being like, you know what, I am grateful for being in this position, but I'm also grateful for you and where you want to go in your career or what you want to do in this business or whatever it is you do. I think that sets the tone for everything. One of the things that I do every single morning before I wake up, before my feet hit the floor, is I think of 3 things that I'm grateful for. You know,
and do you put them in, are they in categories or whatever pops in your mind?
Whatever pops in my mind. I could be grateful for the sunshine today. I could be grateful for the fact that, today's going to be an amazing day because I'm going to be on a podcast with somebody. I can be grateful for the fact that, I had a healthy breakfast. Whatever it is that comes to my mind, I think of three things before my feet hit the floor. Because what it does for me is it sets the tone in my mind right away that this day is going to be off to a great start.
Yes.
And it really just sets this sense of ease and calmness before maybe a chaotic day.
I love that.
All of our days are chaotic. They really are, if you think about it. There's so much that we're pulled at every single day. And I think if we just stop and understand what we're really, really grateful for, to me, it can erase a lot of that chaoticness.
1,000%.
Before I go to bed, I practice what's called the 1-1-1 method. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No, tell me.
And I love this because it forces me to journal quickly, though. Because sometimes we're tired and we want to go to bed and we had a rough day. But for me, it's something very fast and something very quick. But I open up my journal and I write down one thing that was a win that day.
Okay.
Just something that I won. It could be anything, right? I won the fact that I won a deal, or had a great call with one of my salespeople, or whatever it is, or had a great dinner with my wife, whatever it is. One win, just simple. And the second thing I write down is, what's one thing that's giving me anxiety right now? What is one thing that is really just on my mind that is just giving me angst? So I write that down. And then the third thing is one thing I'm grateful for. And what this does is the one win for me gives me excitement that I accomplished something today. It gives me that, I really did this well today. The second thing of the anxiety piece is I'm able to write it down. I'm able to mentally say what I have anxiety about right now, but I'm able to crumple that thing up and throw it away because I wrote it down. It gets it out of my mind. It helps me sleep better at night because otherwise I'd be thinking about that.
So good.
And then the third thing of being grateful, it just gives me hope. It gives me hope at the end of the day that there are still amazing things out there that I should be grateful for that I take for granted sometimes.
As a leader, do you try to instill principles overtly with your team?
I do.
Or because I'm kind of the same way, and some of them I just pass along. Some of them I learn from example, or I try to obviously you try to model behavior and stuff. And so one of the things I like to do is to have a word of the year. Right? I've been doing it. I think I'm on year 14 or something.
Love that.
And what I look to do is during that year, put an intentional focus on that word. This year, my word was joy. And the reason I'm bringing this up is you talked about gratitude being the start of leadership for you. And I'll never forget it, on January 19th this year. So joy is my thing. And typically what I'll do is when I first wake up is I'll search something on YouTube about joy or whatever my word is, right? And just to try to get a bunch of different perspectives, thing to think about, this and that. And I'm on this walk, so I have my morning routine, and part of that is a walk. And so as I'm on this walk, I'm realizing, you know what? What really brings me joy is gratitude. If I'm grateful in this moment, how can I not be joyful?
Oh,
and if I'm grateful in that moment, how can I not be joyful? The trick is, and this is where I want to kind of now transition with you, is finding gratitude in pain, difficulty, sorrow, because that happens. And people listening or watching, they might be like, all right, guys, that's all good and well.
Sure.
But like right now, I have my aunt's husband just found out he has cancer, stage 3. One of our team members for Ramos Law and for FitMD, they're sisters. Their brother, 31 years old, is probably not going to make it through the day. Like there is stuff like that. I went through this in the loss of a 25-year-old son. How do you find gratitude in that? And I have my thoughts, but I would like yours on because you got to have gratitude through all things. It's not just the good times.
Even in the worst of times, if you step back and you think about everything that you have in your life, you'll find some kind of gratefulness there. Even in those hard times that you just described. And sometimes that's the hardest time to sit there and think about those things.
Amen.
But if you put it in perspective of all the things that you really have in your life, it's a lot. It really is. It's probably hundreds of things that you take for granted every day. Getting up this morning, that's a blessing. Being able to have breakfast this morning, that was a blessing. Being able to drive my car to meet you today, that was a blessing. Little things that we think to ourselves every single day we don't think about, but those things we should be grateful for, even in the hardest times. So I think in those times, the best thing you can do is obviously you should be in that moment because those are hard things. But gather somebody else with you that you're close with. Talk to them. Hey, I know this is a tough time right now, and I know we're dealing with a lot, but what are the things we have to be grateful for right now? Maybe if it's a sick parent and they're going through the situation that you described, man, I'm grateful for that. I have this opportunity to be with them in their last days.
Yes.
Because how many people get that? A lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. I relate this back to my parents right now. My parents they're getting older, and they were retired out in Reno for a long time, 25 years. And they're in great health. But all of a sudden, my dad and my mom told me, they said, hey, we want to move closer to you as we get older in our lives. And I was like, that would be great. I never thought that they would move where they are.
Yes.
They're in good health. They're fine. But my dad said, I want to take and cherish these times that I have right now.
Wow.
With you. And I was like, whoa. So they moved here literally 8 months ago, packed up everything, sold everything. And the purpose was, going back to what we talked about, was being grateful for the time that we have right now.
Yes.
Together. Because he knows he's getting older and they know they're getting older, and they don't want to miss out on opportunities as they get older now.
I love that.
And I was like, whoa, that's huge. That taught me a huge lesson, right? Mm-hmm. They were grateful for the fact that they still are able to be around their son, but they wanted to move closer to family.
Yes.
As they get older.
I think that's brilliant. And for them to have that self-awareness,
yep.
So good, because most of us get so tied up in our lives.
Yeah.
We're just driving to the next thing, right? And
yep.
and I know for my parents, my stepdad's going through some health stuff with dementia and things like that. My mom's trying to take care of them, and we want them to come closer, but they have their lives, and there's all these things. So when you come to the decision of what's right for you at that time in your life, and you're able to chase it, then you can be grateful.
Yeah.
And I would add, of the losses that I've had the opportunity to experience, and I say that with, kind of tongue in cheek and kind of, hey, you grow through everything.
Yeah.
When I could look at even the loss of our son and say, I was grateful for the 25 years. I was grateful I was there at his last breath. I was grateful there was nothing left unsaid between us. Mm-hmm. It helped me process. Now, I was super fortunate, but there are plenty of times, someone gets murdered or something happens. There's a lot of things that it's hard to be grateful for, but that's when I think we need to say, I am grateful that I can somehow help this person in some way. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to bring that out, because if that's where you start your leadership journey for others from, I think we expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, and look, there is so much negativity around us right now. There's a lot. I mean, we're getting pulled in a lot of different directions, it seems, right, in today's world. I don't know if you would agree with that, but
1,000%.
There's a lot out there. And I heard this the other day, because they talked about gratefulness, and it stuck with me. And they were talking about all that negativity. And there's one way to erase negativity, and that is gratefulness. So if you're feeling throughout the day that, man, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Man, this just isn't my day. Man, that client didn't get back to me. Oh, man, I'm having trouble with my spouse right now, or my kids, or whatever it might be. I'm struggling with this. Stop. Just stop. Reset your mind and think to yourself, hey, what all do I have to be grateful for right now? Because that helps me reset those thinkings.
Yes.
And it pulls me away from that, quote, negativity or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Just a simple stop throughout the day and reset your mind to a couple of things that you have gratitude about, that you're grateful for. Because odds are, look, you're going to look at it and you haven't had that Rolodex in your mind that you can go through very often. Right. Because most of us don't do that regularly, and you forget. All the blessings that you do have and the gratefulness you should be spouting out into the world. So for me, that helps. You know, you got something that's going on in your life and you're, stop for a minute and just give yourself a pause to think for 15 to 30 seconds about some things you're grateful for. Kind of resets your thinking, I think.
So good. And with that as a foundation, do you then have a structured set of leadership principles that you like to do, or do you go by the method of, when I'm working with someone, I'm checking their personality, I'm trying to figure out them, and then what have I taken in through my life to help them? So is it more structured, like we're going to go through A, B, C? How do you approach it?
Everybody's different.
Okay.
And I think you have to lead people differently. Everybody's personality is totally different. Everybody's, who they are as a person, they're totally different. So for me, when I go out and try to lead a group of people, it's different for every single person. Now, collectively, I think it's important for the organization or the people that you lead to understand what you're all about and what you want to strive for the organization or whatever it is.
Showing the vision, casting the vision.
Casting that vision, right? If you walk around our building at Denver7, you'll see there's a huge sign. Did you watch Ted Lasso?
A little bit, not much, a little bit. Yeah.
You know the sign believe.
Yes.
Right, that he always has. We have a sign at Denver7 that just says grateful. And it's a huge board. And everybody's encouraged to just put up a sticky note on that board to say what they're grateful for. And so what does that do, right? I'm a grateful person. It instills what I believe, but it also helps people to understand, man, there's a lot more than I realize maybe that I'm grateful for. Maybe here at work, maybe my family or whatever it is. But if you walk by that and you see that, you think to yourself, wow, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And how do you get to know the people individually? So if you're going to lead people differently, which I agree with 1,000%.
Yeah.
It started out even for me in high school, realizing how I was coached in football, that I was coached different than my fellow co-captain. They used to have to run this dude like hard in order to like get on him to get him to respond. And I wouldn't respond that way. So they were softer with me because that's what I needed to get the best out of me. How do you get to the point where you understand your team enough to know who needs what in leadership capacity?
Well, that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And you can't be fake about it, right? I think that's important. Because leadership, people will see right through that if you're not real. I think helping them understand where you come from first, right? And who you are as a person and who you are as a leader helps engage in that dialogue pretty quickly. And I think once you can establish that with the person that you're leading, they may let some guards down and feel a little bit more comfortable talking to you specifically about how they want to be led or how they feel in certain situations. I try to make it feel as comfortable as I can right away with somebody that I'm leading and be very transparent and honest about who I am as a leader and where my pitfalls are as a leader. So they can see underneath this, right, that I'm just a person like them. I'm the same person. We all have pitfalls. We all have guardrails. We all have failures in our lives. None of us are perfect. And I think as a leader leading an organization, if you can show that to your people right away, they immediately will think, oh, well, he's just like me. He has struggles too. He's not perfect. Even though he's supposed to lead this entire organization, man, he still struggles with this or that or this is where he still needs to work as a leader to get better. So I think when people really understand that, that's when, to me at least, the magic starts happening, that those walls come down and the people that you're leading feel more comfortable talking to you. And you can understand them a little bit better, I think, after that.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing for all leaders at scale. When I was first here, we had 35 people, and I got to know everybody. Before we started, I was just up in our cafeteria, and I met an attorney that started on Monday that I had not met yet, right? Because just the way that my position has taken and the scale of growth has not allowed that to take place. But here's where I think it comes down to leadership. You lead hundreds of people at the station. You can't possibly have that personal relationship with everybody. So how do you figure out who the people are that you directly connect with? And then how do you develop those people so that they can essentially lead in your stead, or at least through your legacy, down through the ranks, if you will, to the newest person or the person that isn't on camera? Do you have a process for that?
That's the hardest thing, right? How do you do that? There is a process that I have. We hire a lot of people just like you guys do, right? And to your point, you just met a lawyer that you hadn't met yet. I make it a point, no matter the person we hire, I at least want to talk to them for at least 15 to 30 minutes before we hire them. We may have already decided that person. My team does a great job with that, and they should, because that's their role and their responsibility, and I trust that. But I at least want 15-minute Zoom to understand the person that I'm hiring. So at least I can get a gauge of who that is, but they understand who I am as a leader leading that organization.
And do you cast the vision for them in that 15 minutes? What do you try to do there?
I try to do, but I ask some probing questions that will lead me to, this is the person we should hire. We give back a lot at Denver7 in the community.
Absolutely.
We do a lot in the community as it relates to events and things that we do. And so one of the questions I always ask is, do you love your community and do you like to give back to your community? Tell me a time where you did some community service recently. That gives me a good gauge that this is going to be a good fit for Denver7 because that's who we are. That's who our people are. If you walk around our building and you talk to anybody at Denver7, they'll probably all give you a similar response about what it means to work at Denver7. To me, that's a good sign that we're doing something right. But I ask those probing questions just because I want to understand if they do give back to their community, if that's important to them. And if they can't give me that answer, I'll take that back to some of my leaders and say, hey, this is maybe a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
We should dive into this a little bit more before we hire this person.
Mm-hmm.
So I go through that process. When I walk around our building, if I stop somebody and talk to them, whether it be at the coffee machine or wherever it is, I always ask them, hey, is there anything that I can do to help you make your job easier? Yep. And just that little instant connection, I think gives them some time that, maybe they wouldn't have time to do because their day is so busy, but it gives them, hey, maybe people are listening to what's going on.
Yeah.
And what I need to help me make my job easier.
And you
Can I
talk
do
about
that all the time? No. But,
But you want to and
Yes,
you offer. Like,
absolutely.
it's so funny that you said that. I hadn't even thought about something that happened just yesterday. Where I was upstairs and I had seen someone who I had met for the first time. So I'm a chiropractor as well. And so I adjust people here. No cost. It's just the team members. I have a table here and whatever, just to try to help when I can. And they all know and they all respect the time. They're like, we know you're busy. And I'm like, no, look, I got this time here. We'll help you. So I did this with this person. First time I'd met her, she was pretty new. And I saw her yesterday up in our cafeteria, in our lunchroom. And I just went over to her and I said, hey, how you feeling? How'd the adjustment work? And this and that. And, set our pleasantries and went on my way. And then I'm back on my schedule. Well, we have an intranet where we get to talk to each other here. And there was a message on it, and it was from her. And I popped it up, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And she popped up, she said, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate not the adjustment, not taking care of her spine, that you stopped and said hi to me.
That's awesome.
And I'm like,
simple, right?
Yeah, simple.
Right.
But it makes a difference for leaders at every level to feel, to be open, to be connected, and then to be vulnerable with who you are. And that, I think, takes time as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's a big leadership thing. How do you view vulnerability?
Look, no one's perfect. I love vulnerability, right? No one's perfect. I mean, I view it this way, like if my team doesn't know what I'm struggling with or where I need to grow as a leader, I'm not doing my job. And to me, that's being vulnerable with your team. If we're dealing with a difficult situation or a hard time or whatever it might be, if I open up to my staff and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling in this moment right now, I just want you to know that I'm struggling with this. But I need you to help me get through this and be stronger for me. And that's hard to do.
It is.
When you're at the top.
Yep.
Because it's lonely up there sometimes. And sometimes I think as a leader, if you're at that position, you tend to bottle a lot of that in because you don't want to seem like you're not in control or you don't have it all figured out. But I think it's those moments that you tell your team, I don't have it all figured out right now. That's when you draw closer to your leaders, and I think you win. Because ultimately, I think the team will rally around that. They really will. And if you hire the right people, boy, that's when magic starts happening.
Yes.
Because they rally around you and bring you up as a leader.
They got your back, as they say.
Absolutely, right, 100%. And then at the same time, it goes in reverse, right? They start opening up. Hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I think I'm falling short as a leader right now in this area. Can you help me? And when you start having those conversations around your inner circle of leaders, boy, that's when things start really clicking and you have fun.
I agree.
And it's so powerful because what that does to me is that starts at that level, but what does that do? Those leaders then spread that down to their leaders who spread it down to their people who spread it down to their people. And I think then you've got this full circle approach of, a station that practices gratefulness or a station that understands that being vulnerable is A-okay and we're not going to hold that against you or think you're any less because of that.
Yes. And we've talked a lot about, through the first part of the show here, what I would label as, and this is not a disparaging term, the soft side of leadership between gratitude, vulnerability, connection, right? That's where what I call the bank account of trust and love.
Yeah.
That's where you build
the bank
balances.
account of trust and love?
Yeah.
I love that.
So when even this relationship that we're having, or this interaction, to me, for our relationship, we're putting tons of deposits in that bank. And deposits. And the more deposits we put, the bigger balance we have. And then when something happens where you need to have a tough conversation with me, or I need to have a tough conversation with you, or I mess up, or you mess up, it's a withdrawal. But if we have a big balance, we know that we have what's each other's best interests in mind.
We know we're good.
We know we're good. Whereas if you have no balance and you have a big withdrawal, account closed, right?
Yeah.
Like it can cause problems. Yeah. And all that we've been talking about is, in my mind, filling up that balance. If we were to transition to let's just call it more the hard technical pieces of leadership, where do you put metrics in that? Like, Because you have to, as Maxwell says, you have to balance kindness with candor. And my nature is kind. And I don't want to tell you sometimes the truth because I don't want to hurt your feelings. That's where I've had to grow as a leader to be able to say through the bank account of trust and love, I love you, but I got to tell you this, right? It's my job to tell you this. Do metrics play a big role for you to help transition then from the relationship side to we got to get stuff done here?
Yeah, you and I are so similar. Because I tend to lead from the heart a lot. Sometimes that gets you in trouble.
Yes, sir.
Right? You probably felt that, right?
I have.
I think, look, you should never have a tough conversation with an employee who doesn't already know it's coming, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They should know ahead of time that you're about ready to have a tough conversation with them because you're having conversations the whole time leading
along
up to
the
that.
way.
Yeah. So if you do, say you have quarterly check-ins with your employees, they should know exactly where you stand even before you get in that meeting because you've been talking about those things along the way. Even if it's leading up to having to let somebody go, they should probably already know that that's coming before you have that tough conversation. So those tougher conversations, I don't want to say they get any easier because they never do, but they somehow are less hard for me as a leader because my people understand that along the way we've had those conversations, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And are you using, sometimes someone just plain messes up.
Yes,
they make
absolutely.
a bad character decision. Sometimes you got to just handle that.
You do.
On the performance side though, in their work or whatever position, if you're a team, if you're leader of a team and it's a position player, whatever, if you're in a church group and it's how the attendance is going, there's pieces that you say, hey, there's policy, systems, and procedures that drive this metric. If the metric's falling, we got to identify what those are and fix those things, and we know the metric will change.
Yeah.
Is that part of what you guys look at in the leadership sense?
Yeah, people need to know the metrics. They need to know the expectations. They need to know the expectations up front for me. If I hire a brand new leader on my team, I'm going to sit down and we're going to talk about that. Now, together, we're probably going to come up those, but I have, kind of what I want to get out of that person in that role. But they should know exactly what are those metrics that I'm trying to achieve. And for my mind would be success, right? And those can change. They always can, right? But it never should be a surprise. So there are metrics, yes, along the way. And all of our check-ins, or our one-on-ones, we should talk about those. Those shouldn't be secret. They shouldn't be hidden. Those metrics shouldn't come out at the end of the quarter when you're having to have a tough conversation because nothing's been done.
So true.
And I think that's what some leaders fall into, right? They fall into the trap of, I have a yearly check-in with my employee or quarterly or whatever it is. I better write something down. And then the employee gets that and they read it and they're like, well, where has this been for the last 6 months? Why haven't we talked about this? So I think that's a trap that some leaders fall into, and it's hard, right? Because you don't want to have some of those conversations along the way because sometimes they're tough.
Yes.
But you have to have those.
You do.
100%. You've got to have those. Because if you don't, you're going to fall victim that you're going to have an employee that's going to be even more disgruntled because they don't know where you're going as a leader and they don't know your expectations of them as a leader. They've got to know that up front.
There's an author, and I'm sure you've heard of him, named Patrick Lencioni. And so we use a lot of his Working Genius productivity tool tests. So there's personality tests. They've created productivity tool tests, and we use that here. And I was listening to his podcast on it's called At the Table. And so he's got one At the Table and one Working Genius podcast. And I like his thought process, so I kind of engage with that. And he was talking about a run towards the smoke. It was the title of the podcast. And basically, and it was designed for leaders, saying when you see smoke, you run to it before it's a big flame. It might be a big flame if it's too far away, but when you see smoke, go to it. And most leaders are like, oh, I'm too busy, or I hope that this person handles it, or I hope that person handles it.
I love that.
It was so good. It was so profound to me because I could think of situations in my role and in our company right now where I've seen the smoke. And I'm like, wonder how that's going to work out. I wonder if Susie's going to handle that, right? Versus me saying, Susie, you got this, or me handling it directly, because I think that it shows that, number one, that the leaders care, and that we see what's going on, that we're not oblivious, that we're not at the top and in a silo away from everything, but rather, hey, we're watching over the entire encampment to make sure everything's cool, right? Like Lion King, we got to be Simba, man.
Yeah.
And so to go towards that and then say, okay, what part do I play and what part do I play to fix it?
Love it.
To me, that was really, really powerful in this sense of not wondering, not letting the people wonder. Because then what I've also found is, I'm sure you can speak to this, when you let something fester in a person, not only does it wreck that part, but then your A players start going, what, you're going to tolerate this? Mm-hmm. So either they don't become A players or they're like, A players don't do that. We're going to go work over here.
So all of my leadership team, I did this exercise with them recently, but if you walked on their desk, they have a little dragon, a little toy dragon on their desk. And we did this, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 months ago in one of our leadership meetings. But the analogy was talking about little problems that blow up into big problems. Mm. And how do you take the little problems and make sure they stay little so that that dragon doesn't become a fire-breathing dragon? And we talked about that because it can happen like that.
What were some steps that you guys talked about with that we could all learn from?
Well, I think the first thing was identifying that problem. But to your point, go to the smoke, right? If it's something that you don't want to deal with, you probably have to deal with it.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't put it off.
Yes.
Because the more you put it off, the more that dragon starts to breathe. And the more that dragon starts to spit fire, and then that fire becomes huge and it engulfs everything. And then we talked about that fire will spread to other people if you're not careful. So the first step was don't ignore it. As little as it seems, don't ignore it. Hit it head on, squash it right away, and you're going to thank yourself later, right? So everybody's got that little dragon on their desk, nice. To remind them that, hey, however little it might seem, I probably got to take care of that before it becomes this fire-breathing dragon, and then we're sitting down having a tougher conversation because, boy, this is out of control now. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the first thing, was identify it, make sure you squash it right away before it becomes a big smoke.
A big beast.
Yeah, a big beast, right?
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
When you have a problem that's getting to be a big beast, or it's in the small campfire phase, do you have a certain method, or maybe it's just natural, of helping correct someone's performance or behavior? Like, do you come at it hard? Because everyone who's a leader, again, no matter what level, no matter what type of leader, either in their home, in their church, in their sports teams, in their philanthropic efforts, or in their business, you're going to have to, as the leader, you're going to have some confrontation sometimes, what they call fierce conversations. Yep. How do you go about structuring that so that you get the result that you need and that the person needs, and that you also help spare their confidence?
I love that question. Thanks for asking. There are a couple of things, but feedback is the most important gift anybody can ever receive. And if you're not giving adequate feedback to your team regularly, you're doing yourself a disfavor.
Which goes to say they shouldn't be surprised that the tough conversation's coming, because they've heard it along the way.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be negative feedback.
Yep.
Or constructive feedback. It can be positive feedback. It doesn't matter what type of feedback it is. If you're not doing that regularly with your teams, you're missing out. One thing that I do that helps me, we are all busy on all of our levels every single day, and our calendars are stacked. We have Zooms. We have it's overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
I always leave myself an hour every single Friday on my calendar that does not change. And that is an hour for me to brainboard, to sit there and release everything that I learned that week. And then I also write down notes on who I need to give feedback to.
And do you do that by yourself? Is that a solo project?
Solo project.
Okay.
But what it does is it forces me to think, right? Because sometimes throughout the day, you don't have time to do that.
Yes.
How often do we don't have time to just sit and think? In our brains, we have to do that. That's how we're wired.
Right.
That's how we get better. And so it forces me to think about that stuff, but it forces me to remember who I need to give feedback to. And so I write it out. I need to give feedback to whoever it is, Jim or Sally, whoever it is. And I'm specific with that feedback. Hey, on Tuesday during this meeting, I noticed this, and this is how it made me feel. I just want to make sure that I told you that.
So good.
Right?
That is so good. That's gold.
It is, right? But you have to do that with your teams. And then it forces me the following week to circle back up with those people that I need to touch. So I don't forget. Because in the moment, sometimes you forget, I didn't like how that conversation went down, and we forget about it. But it forces you to remember that conversation and give the feedback. Hey, Dr. Hosen, by the way, yesterday in our meeting, you said something that made me feel this way.
Yeah.
And this is how it made me feel, and I just want to let you know that, that's how it made me feel, and I think we need to work on that a little bit or something.
And when
like that.
you're scheduling for that hour, do you look back at your calendar to say, okay, here was this, or are you doing it through the day and just jotting little date
I'm
notes and
jotting
looking at your notes for that hour later in the
I
week?
jot a lot down. I have a note system that is pretty extensive if you looked at my calendar or my notes, and a lot of those things I'll jot down because I'll forget about it.
Yep, I would too.
But I circle back to it and okay, I got to give, I got to do this or do that or give this kind of feedback. But it goes back to feedback again. I mean, that's with every employee, down to any kind of level.
Yes.
If you're managing or leading a group of people, you've got to be able to give good feedback. And that is hard, I think, for young leaders to understand sometimes. As a young leader, I think that's the hardest thing because, I don't want to hurt that person's feelings.
Yes, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, of course.
I still struggle with it, but
too.
I agree with you.
But you know what? You're going to make that person 10 times better when you give that feedback.
Yeah.
And you're going to really help that person grow as a leader. And they're going to thank you for it. Mm-hmm. It may be hard in the moment, but ultimately they're going to thank you for it. But it's got to be specific feedback. It can't just be, hey, don't do that anymore. What you said, that was wrong. It's got to be specific. Hey, during this time, this is what you did. This is how it made me feel. And this is where I think you can grow as a leader because of it.
Beautiful. So here's a strange question a lot of leaders don't think about. We think we always have to be right in the leadership position. We think we always have to have the answer. We think we always have to, toe the line and carry the ball. But as Maxwell talks about, we all have blind spots.
All of us. And
how do you tell your team to bring that feedback to you so that you can have iron sharpen iron and so that you know that that opens your vulnerable self? Do you just tell them at some point in time, hey, look, there's things that you guys will see that I might not see. I need you to feel open to bring it to me. Because some leaders, that they feel like they can't do that or shouldn't do that because then they can't have all the answers. How do you approach that?
When I have my one-on-ones with my circle team every week.
How big a team is that? Is your inner circle?
8, 9.
8, 9. Because I agree. I don't think that one person can have many more than that and really be effective to give them that consistent feedback.
Sure. I always try to ask them, at the end of our meetings, how can I be a better leader for you? What can I do to be a better leader for you to help you in your day-to-day? And I think that's the vulnerability that you talk about.
Yep.
And over time, that opens communication like, hey, this, or this, or you did this the other day and this is how it made me feel, or this happened and I just want to understand why we decided to go this way instead of this way. I need your support here a little bit more. I need you to encourage my team a little bit more here, or whatever it might be. So I think just asking that simple question.
Yeah, and keep asking it, right? Because at first they're probably a little like, wait, you're the head of the entire station. I'm going to be real careful with what I say because I don't want to, offend you, which might hurt my career, et cetera, et cetera. So
you got to be consistent.
Yeah.
And that's a great point that you brought up. I mean, consistency as a leader is key, right? I am very consistent with my team every single week. They know what to expect. So they're not surprised.
Yes.
Every single Friday, my entire team, the entire station, they know they're going to get an email from me that's called the Weekly Blast that talks about everything that's going on at the station, that talks about everything that we're involved in, and we have some fun in there. And then I give my final thoughts at the end. It's usually some kind of a leadership thought or something that's on my mind or something that gives us hope or full gratefulness or whatever. But they can expect that email every single Friday. And if I miss that email, I'm like, oh, what's going on with me, right? Why did I miss that email, right? But my point, hey, what happened? Where's the blast? They know that that's consistent with me. So I think consistency is key. You've got to be consistent. And over time, what does that do, right? It opens doors.
Absolutely.
Right? It opens your heart. It opens communication, right? All those things.
And you have been a mentor to so many people in your organization, and that's led to its success. I really work hard on trying to fill that role in this business. Who are some of your leadership role model / mentors that if someone's watching or listening, like, man, if I want to follow up, who would I go listen to? Who would I go talk to? What do you think about that?
Well, authors, I love Simon Sinek.
Oh, he's great.
Man, he's one of my favorites. If you haven't read any of his stuff, I mean, the audience out there, go read his stuff, right? He is great. He just gives good practical tips on what leadership is like in leading a group of people. So I eat all of his stuff up. I really do. Personally, look, my dad.
Oh, nice.
I mean, my dad is my best friend. He is somebody who gives me great counsel, gives me great advice. And at the end of the day, it's just somebody I can be real to.
Yeah.
And I can sit down and really talk to him about anything that's on my mind. And he'll always give me great perspective because he himself have probably been through similar situations that I've been through in my life. So I love the fact that I had that relationship with my dad because it just, I'm grateful for that, you know, and he has given me so much wisdom through the years and times that I've struggled, and times that I've had joy, but times that I just need somebody to have an ear. You know, and so he's an amazing leader for me. And there are leaders throughout my industry who don't know. You know, my first job that I got hired in Tyler, Texas, which is a little town in East Texas. I was, you know, wanting to be a sportscaster, and I show up at the station to drop off my tape to see the general manager. And I didn't have an appointment, and they made
Were you
me
dropping off the kids' tapes, by the way?
Yeah, part of it
the
was kids.
Yeah.
And I sit there in the lobby for God knows how long, it felt like hours. And he comes out, he's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Well, I know you have a position potentially open maybe in news or wherever. I just want to see if I can get a job." Comes back to his office, pops my tape in, watches it for 10 seconds and says, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I want to be a sportscaster." And he said, "Well, you're in luck. My weekend sportscaster is leaving. I need one. Do you want the job?" That's how I got my first, you know, quote, network television job.
Synchronicity and timing.
Yeah, right timing again. And he became one of my biggest mentors because he hired me 2 or 3 times. And then we ultimately started a broadcasting company called London Broadcasting together. And I learned the other side of the business from him.
Wow.
And so he's one of my biggest mentors in the business. He's retired now, but I'll occasionally call him and say, "Man, can you believe this?" He's like, "I'm so happy that I'm retired. You don't have to deal with that anymore." But yeah, so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think if I were answering that question for myself,
Yeah,
it would probably be,
you?
I love, we've mentioned him a couple times, John Maxwell.
Great.
Love his stuff. Really into Pat Lencioni right now. Came into him.
Did John do Born to Run?
No.
Okay.
I can't remember who that is, but no, he did not do that. He's written 100 books, though.
Wow.
100 books. It's insanity. I also really like Darren Hardy to a degree. That some of his stuff is really, really good. And Tony Robbins. Like Tony Robbins, you get the, you know, you
get fired up
you
with
get the
Tony.
juice, you get all
Yeah.
that stuff. So those would be my that people would go check out probably. But
You know, one that's kind of unassuming, Steve Harvey.
oh yeah, interesting,
Man,
because you don't think of him
no,
like that.
He is very inspirational.
Yeah,
He really is.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of good things to say about leadership, people, everything. He talks a lot about gratefulness too as well.
What do you think about and I mean, I could talk about this topic forever.
Yeah, me too. I'm
Right?
the same way.
What do you think about the topic of culture to create leadership effectiveness? In other words, if we're gonna make sure that our team that is following us is in a good space, in my mind, it's super important to have the culture set up for that to succeed. Everything from the environment that they work in, the things that they're about, how do you take care of them, the benefits that they get from working, you know, all that stuff. That creating that culture makes people more open to leadership if you've done a good job in hiring. Is that how you would see it?
I think so. Listening is a big part of that.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
I think you've got to listen to really what's going on in your organization, and that's hard to do, especially if you have a bigger organization. So you're relying on your leaders a lot to come to you, to talk to you about what they're hearing, but then acting on that, you know, if you can. Some of the smallest things, I think, go a long way with people, but they hear you and they know you're listening. You know, it could be something as small as, "Man, that light bulb in the bathroom has been out for 3 months." I mean, it could be something as small as that, right?
Yes.
But if you listen to that and you take time to fix that small, minute thing that's bothering that one person, I think that's how culture starts spreading into a positive manner.
I love it.
But that's hard to do sometimes, again,
Yeah.
in a bigger organization. I mean, that's one thing that I struggle with too at times is the fact that it's a large group of people. And you can't have your pulse on everything. But it goes back to if you hire the right people, you can. You know, it's all about your inner circle. And if you're hiring the right people, everything else seems to fall in place.
Love that. As we wrap this up, if someone wanted to get a hold of you to learn about your journey or to connect with you or to learn what, you know, Channel 7 does or anything, how would they reach you?
LinkedIn. I'm very heavily involved on LinkedIn. So you can just look me up, Brian Joyce, LinkedIn. You'll see me pop up pretty quick. Get a hold of me that way, or just call the TV station. Find the number on the website. I believe my email is probably on the website too. They can probably find that too as well.
Awesome. Brian, this has been a pleasure for me. Again,
I've had
such
a great
treat
time.
just
I'm
to go
honored.
back and forth.
I'm grateful that you gave me this opportunity.
And I am grateful that you accepted the opportunity because I feel better equipped as a leader, as I go through the rest of my day, just from our time together. And I always think that I can learn something from people like yourself that are so committed to the process, and just being around kindred spirits, right? Like it fills my cup up. So thank you for coming. We wish you continued success. I know we're partners with you in in the Denver7 community, and so we look forward to that to continue. So please, if you have enjoyed this, and you got something about leadership, and if you didn't, you weren't listening or you're not about it. But if you did, please do the things that you know will help others. Share it, like our stuff, give all those designations, dinging, and give me notifications, all the stuff that I don't really do a lot of in front of the camera here, but please do that stuff so that others can get the impact of the message here. And by the way, if you have something that you'd like us to talk about, a subject matter, a guest or something, let me know. You can reach me, jim@ramoslaw.com, and I'll do my best to make sure that we get a show for you, because this is just something that we want to do to make a difference in your life. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you to go make a difference in the lives of others.